upside down too, probably. Aloha, and welcome to the Believer's Journey. And so I'm coming to you now from Santa Clarita, California, in the United States. We traveled here to visit family. My mother was living with us for close to a year, and so now she was bringing her back home, and we're at my brother's home, and so this is kind of cool. And behind me, you have a really beautiful area, backyard, and so forth. And today's topic, I want to talk about the importance of family. Last 2 weeks ago, we talked about honoring your father and mother. And so right now, I want to talk about family to gather in because in a couple of weeks, we're going to have Father's Day here in the United States. And so I wanted to bring it all together. The Bible talks a lot about family and how families should be disciplined, how people in the family need to react or talk to each other or do things for each other. We find a lot of that in Proverbs. Proverbs talks about, for example, raising your children right in the Lord. Talks about how the children are a gift of the Lord and how we raise them, and when they're adults, basically, it's like we offer them back to the Lord, and so forth. And we bring them up so that they could be an asset to society, an asset to the Lord. It also talks about how wives and husbands should be toward one another, not just parents to children, but also mother and father, or husband and wife to one another. And so it says that husbands are to love their wives and treat them in a way that's understanding, to them. Not that they understand you, but that you are gentle with them, that you treat them in an understanding way. Talks about wives and how they need to honor their husbands, submit in a way that brings respect. And it talks about fathers and the way you discipline your children, that you don't, get them all upset, get them all riled up, and turn them against you, because eventually that'll just turn them against God. So I think it's important we see that. I know that one thing about children, it says children are an inheritance from the Lord. So we need to respect the fact that what God gives us, we need to treat with that kind of respect. Understanding that God gave you your children, God gave you your spouse, and we honor that and we treat that with utter respect. I believe that if we don't honor the people in our family, we're going to have a hard time honoring the people who are not in our family. One of the things it says in 1 Timothy 5:8, I'm going to read this, it says, if anyone does not provide for their relatives, okay? And when it says relatives, we're not talking about children or wives, we're talking about relatives, especially for their own household. Now we're talking about their own wives and children. They have denied the faith, okay, and is worse than an unbeliever. So one of the things that's really interesting is that, and I truly believe this, is that in the Old Testament, when it talks about honoring your father and mother, it doesn't just mean yes sir, no sir, which we talked about before, but it also has a connotation of taking care of them when they're old. My mom now is in her 80s, and my youngest brother and I, we basically take care of her. She's lived with my brother, she's lived with me. We check on her, we make sure she's doing okay. It's a part of honoring, making sure they have what they need. Making sure, and that doesn't mean just, a chair to sit in. That means the love that we offer them. That means, the courtesy that they are still recognized as our mother, as our parent. So I think that's important that we do that. So we need to provide for them in ways that are financial. We need to provide for them in ways that are, emotional and spiritual. One of the things that my wife and I did, we took care of my wife's parents until they passed away. My wife's mother, we took care of them when they lived in their apartment, and finally we had to bring them into our home, and my wife's mother passed away soon, and her father lived with us for probably another over 10 years, and to the point where he could barely walk. He had a lot of other issues we needed to take care of. We took him to the hospital, the doctors, and so forth. It's not an easy task. It's very taxing. But I believe that God will honor you as you honor him. I think he'll bless you as you honor him. And I think it's really important that we understand that's all really important. The next level of family, I believe, is the family of believers. The, Jesus says to love one another as he has loved us. Okay? In 1 John, he says in 1 John chapter 3, verse 16, he says, we know love by this, that we lay down our lives for the brethren. So he's talking about believers, that we need to love the believers, each other, like we're family. We lay down our lives for each other. The word there for love is agape. So are we loving them with agape love? And when we look at other believers, we need to consider them as family. And I don't mean just family that's you go to church with, or you have your little Bible study with, or you have dinner with once a week. I'm talking about the family that's in your town, in your city, in your state, in your country, across the world. We're all family. We're all part of the family of God. You know, if you're a believer, then Jesus, you know, has told us that we need to love one another. You know, we can't be going into churches and treating each other badly. It's all about loving one another. And I really believe that we need to understand why it's important, you know, for all of this. Excuse me. I dropped my notes. So as we go through the scriptures, you know, like I said, there's lots and lots of scriptures about family and how we need to treat our family and love our family. In 1 Peter 3:7, it says something really interesting. It says husbands. So we've already talked about wives, you know, in this chapter. Now we're talking about husbands. In the same way, live with your wives in an understanding way. And that's kind of what I said earlier. As with someone weaker, since she is a woman. Now I know some of you people think that's kind of sexist and so forth, but go with this. And show her honor as a fellow heir of the grace of life. And here's the kicker, so that your prayers will not be hindered. If there's anything we want, it's God to answer our prayers. If there's anything we want, it's God to bless our lives. If you're not treating your wives, if you're not treating your husbands, if you're not treating other people, you know, who are believers or in your family, then how do you expect God to bless you if you can't even honor him and obey him? I think it's really important we understand that. In the Old Testament, it's not any different. God called the people of Israel his children. He said, I will be a father to you. Okay, you are children to me. And so basically, he developed or made the statement that they're family. Okay, when we look at the commandments, all the commandments we'd say that people don't want to recognize. A lot of those commandments have to do with how we treat one another, you know, in respect, in honor, in fairness, in justice. And that's what a lot of the laws have to do with. The statutes are very, very specific with that. We have the same ones today. You know, there's laws that say you shouldn't, in the Old Testament, that you shouldn't have child abuse. You know, if you abuse a child, then it gives you your situation. Well, we have the same laws today. We don't not recognize them because they came from the Old Testament. That's kind of absurd, you know, but they're good to live by. So I think that when we look at family, we need to consider the fact that God holds family very important in his heart. He's given us commandments to go by, to love our family, to take care of our family, to lift up our family, to honor our family. And he also does this not within the blood relationships, but he does that also in the spiritual relationships of those who are part of him, who love him, who are his children. And we need to recognize that. Jesus said in John chapter 13, 34 and 35, to love one another as he loved us. And then 35 says, by this, the way that you love one another, the world will know that you're mine. So how do we show the world that we're truly Jesus? By loving one another. You know, and I think that's really important. We've had such a struggle with many people turning away from the church, turning away from God, because people in the church are treating each other despicably. So family is so important. It's important scripturally, and I think that we need to really recognize that and look up the scriptures. Go to Google and type in family in the Bible, family Bible verses, and I think you'll find that there's more than you'll ever understood. You know, God created the family in the very beginning with Adam and Eve. Okay, and even when Jesus was walking the earth, you know, he took care of his mother. He made sure on the cross, as he was dying in agony, he told John to take care of his mother, and his mother to take care of John. I mean, it's all a part of family. It's all a part of what we do. You know, sometimes it's not easy. We may not get along with everybody, but we need to learn to love and give of ourselves to one another, because that's the commandment that Jesus gave us. Well, anyway, I hope you've enjoyed my background. I hope you've enjoyed the noises of the birds in the air. And behind me, I have this old tree. It's about 500 years old. It's a rare kind of a heritage oak. And it's really a privilege to sit here with this tree. It's really huge. And so as I'm ready to say goodbye, you guys have a wonderful day. We'll see you next week. And aloha. Is there an off button? Stop. There was an X at the top.
I couldn't see.